to Wild and Free Art. I'm Alora, and today I'm going to take you with me on my journey of attempting to rebind an old paperback book that was falling apart. So here is a quick summary of what I did, and then at the end I'll be back to talk about how it turned out and what I feel about that. My first step was to take apart and remove the glue and binding and covers of the original book. It was pretty old, so the glue was really stuck in. I used my heating tool to help loosen the glue and slowly peel off the extra the paper on the binding. This wasn't particularly easy, and again, looking back now, hindsight is 2020. I probably should have spent more time getting rid of all the extra old glue that was on there, as I think this caused a few problems in the end. At a certain point, I tried using the sandpaper to help me out, and that did do a little bit of work on there. But again, I should have spent more time. Once I had more or less managed to get it the way I wanted it, I again went in and separated each page individually. This was like an 800-page book, so this part took me a really long time. But by separating it individually, I was sure that things were not in chunks and that I could get more glue off of each piece. Once I finished separating the pieces, it was time to put them back in order in the right direction from the front cover to the back cover. So another tedious job, but it needed to be done to make sure that when I read it again, I read it the right way. After everything was put back in order, I put it in my book press and I tried to sand off the last bits of glue that were on the spine. After that, and I didn't film that part, but I added the mull to the back of the book, and I also added end papers. And then I sanded all of the sides of the book and cut the end papers, trimmed them down to size. Now here I made my first mistake because I cut the end papers too short, and this causes the end book to be a bit too tight. So lesson learned for the next one. I am struggling with the end one to crack it open better. So again, here I'm just trimming the edges. I've sanded everything down, and I also decided that this was the time to take the measurements for a cover for the cover. So I took a ruler, measured everything, and wrote down the size in order to cut a piece of old book cover into a new one. So here I just measured out my pre-made head and tail bands that I made before at another point, and then I am going to, after I've taken all my measurements, I'm going to pop it into my book press again and give the spine a little bit more glue, as well as add a bookmark and the bands at the top and the bottom. And I'm sorry it's a bit out of frame, but I just don't have enough space to work in it the way I'd like to and film at the same time. But hopefully you kind of get the idea. As I left the binding to dry overnight, I decided to work on preparing the cover. I'm using an old cover from an old book, and it luckily measures just the right size for what I needed between the spine and the two covers. So I measured it down to size, cut it, and then sanded the edges to make sure that there was nothing that was rough in the way. So after I had everything cut for the cover, I decided to test it with, do a test thing with just some washi tape to see how wide I needed to make it for the text block. And again, here I could have gone wider, but I didn't. And I'm kind of kicking myself for that because I didn't consider that the cover paper would tighten the edges of the book. So here I am measuring the cover paper that I've made. It's a paste paper that I made specifically for this book on some Fabriano paper that I cannot remember the weight of, but fairly thick-ish, so I thought it would be sturdy and resistant. I decided to do it as a full piece cover. So here I'm just scoring and folding everything so that it's ready to put together. And then the next step I am going to work on is the decoration of the front cover. Now, I don't have a hot foil press. I don't have any of these fancy things that a lot of people have who rebind books. I don't even have a Cricut to make a stick-on one, so I kind of had to come up with something all on my own. So here I decided to draw on tracing paper and color with paint pens and use that as part of the cover decoration. Now, I played with it quite a bit, and what you see me do in the video isn't exactly how it ended up being, but it came out okay. You'll see in a little while when I do the flip through of the results how it came out, and you can let me know what you think. So I've decided that it's time to glue everything together, and I'm just using PVA glue and brushing it all over the back cover, sorry, the cardboard, the Davy board, sorry, and then I'm just going to glue everything and press it and leave it to sit overnight. As the cover was drying and once the text block was ready the next day, these videos took a few days, I decided that I wanted to do like a gold edge on the book. So I just used some acrylic paint and did a couple layers of gold paint on the edges. Also managing to open and flick through the pages multiple times while I was doing it so that they wouldn't stick together so much. If I were to do this again, I probably would have trimmed the book or sanded the edges more because the pages were quite old and they really absorbed the paint quite a bit, and I had to go over it quite a few times in order to even see the gold in the end, and I did get fingerprints on it. So again, definitely a job I would have done with a little bit more time. So once everything was ready, it was time to put it all together, and this is where my biggest mistake came, which is when I realized that my end papers were too short. And you'll see how tight the book is in the end. when I go to do the flip through at the end. So here I just added the edge of the mull. I glued it on again, just using PVA, and then I just glued the back, closed it, and I just flattened the end paper, then left it to dry. So this is my completed rebind. I have very carefully written on the spine. I have added writing to the front. I've added a layer of varnish. I have my gold pages, my front and back end papers, and my little bookmark. Things I would definitely do things differently when I do my second one. I would certainly leave a bit more of a gap between the spine and the cover because it is quite stiff and I don't want to break the spine in order to read it. Another thing, I probably would have done a little bit more sanding and gluing for the perfect binding because I feel like the pages aren't that well stuck in and I'm afraid that they will fall out. But for my very first time, I'm not displeased with the results. It doesn't look so professional, but again, I'm not trying to be at the moment. I just wanted to make something nice for me to have my little collection and save my book. So if you've enjoyed this, if you've ever tried a rebind, I'd love to know your experience with trying to rebind. Please let me know in the comments below. And if you've liked this content, I would really appreciate a like, a comment, a subscribe, anything to help get it out there and to let me know that this is the kind of stuff that you like to see. In the meantime, happy creating and have a wonderful day. Bye.